Irish Council for Social Housing is the national social housing federation representing more than 250 housing associations across Ireland. Our member organisations, also known as Approved Housing Bodies or AHBs, own and manage almost 45,000 homes and house about 100,000 people. ICSH members operate in every local authority area in the country and in over 500 communities across Ireland. The not-for-profit housing sector has a long and rich history, starting with philanthropic housing trusts in the 1870s. Dublin city centre contained some appalling slums, and in the 19th and early 20th century, our oldest member, the Ivy Trust, was founded in 1890 by Sir Edward Cecil Guinness, and the Trust continues to provide quality social rental housing in Dublin. From the 1930s to the 1950s, more than 50% of all new housing built in Ireland were social homes. However, substandard rental housing persisted, and during the 1980s the housing association sector began to grow, with the likes of Respond Housing catering initially for older people. The Irish Council for Social Housing, the ICSH, was established in 1982, and by the early 1980s more than 70 housing associations were registered, with a total stock of about 2,000 homes. In partnership with local authorities, approved housing bodies respond to a range of housing needs across the country and have a long-term commitment to the communities they operate in. Our members range from large organisations that operate across local authority areas to small associations that provide accommodation for their local communities. AHBs provide housing to families on low income and have a long history of providing housing for people who need accommodation with some element of support. This includes supported housing for older people, disabled people, or people leaving homelessness with complex needs. AHBs have a strong track record in providing innovative solutions to regenerate derelict schemes, complete unfinished developments, and unlock capacity within existing local authority stock. AHBs are working to provide older local authority tenants and property owners with an opportunity to move to purpose-built supported housing schemes adjacent to their communities, freeing up larger houses for families on the housing waiting list. AHB supported housing schemes help to build thriving communities that are safe, attractive and welcoming environments for older tenants that encourage and facilitate independent living within community for as long as possible. Many approved housing bodies are now pursuing mixed tenure and mixed income housing, such as affordable and cost rental housing for households that do not qualify for social housing. Quality housing is the bedrock of successful and sustainable communities. Our homes help us establish strong roots from which better health, educational and employment opportunities flow. Approved housing bodies invest in homes. Approved housing bodies invest in community.
Welcome everyone. I hope you all had a really nice lunch. I'd like to welcome you to the afternoon session of the ICSH conference, which is entitled Public Housing, Scale, Delivery and Targets. So I was delighted to be invited to chair this session, particularly at this very interesting time for social housing. We have a range of very interesting speakers who are going to give you their specific insights into the ambition of the new Housing for All programme for government and what are the challenges and opportunities that this provides for the sector. So without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker, who is Mr. Barry Quinlan, Assistant Secretary from the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage. Barry?
Thanks very much, Fiona. Hello, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Fiona, people hear me there okay, yeah? Good. So look, I was delighted to be asked to come along here today to the ICSH conference. I've worked with the ICSH now from the department for a number of years and over 3 housing strategies, actually. So I was there in the social housing strategy back around 2013. And look, it was a completely different time then, and there was a massive challenge facing the country. And 2 strategies later, all the work that has been done by approved housing bodies, local authorities, etc., we're in a much better place, and it has allowed the government to bring forward a really ambitious housing plan, building on the work that's been done to date. And look, we're not there yet. Everybody knows that in terms of housing in the country, but there's a huge opportunity here now and a real determination to go that what we would consider to be, I suppose, in a way, the final step along that way to try to get back to a more even keel on a multi-annual basis and to build a more sustainable housing system for the country. Huge role for approved housing bodies in that, not just in social housing, but in affordable housing. And look, I've done a lot of work with yourselves in social housing. I've moved now to a focus on affordable housing and homelessness, and I'll talk particularly a bit about that. But generally, I just want to bring you through the overall plan. And look, we can have a discussion at the end of it then, and I think there's some time for Q&A. So look, for people that don't know me, Barry Quinlan is my name. I work in the Department of Housing here. I've had a few roles in housing, and at the moment I head up the homelessness, affordable housing and inclusion division. So again, a focus on some of the more marginalised groups in society, and particularly around affordable. So in terms of the plan, it's split over 4 pathways, over 200 actions in it. And the first one is around supporting home ownership and increasing affordability. That is a move from where we were, and my own division is the first time that I can recall that the department has a standalone affordable housing division. And so look, there's I suppose you can see where the emphasis and focus is there. Secondly, eradicating homelessness, and look, that's a really big thing to have in a plan, given where Ireland has been in the last number of years. But we're in a place where I think, the minister and government really want to go for that. And, a huge part of it is increasing social housing delivery. And then, as I said, I have within that, again, there are groups that need that extra bit of help around housing inclusion. Overall then, and look, I'll go through the numbers in a minute, but we need over 300,000 homes out to 2030. So the state is not going to deliver all of those. It'll have a very big role, probably around half. So increasing housing supply more generally, and all the pieces around viability, affordability, critical as well. And then finally, and it's something that is, I suppose it's a difficult nut to crack, is around using the current stock efficiently, and particularly making sure we don't get in our own way in terms of causing vacancy and, buildings not to be used efficiently over time. So some very big numbers in the plan, but again, building on what this sector and local authorities and others have done, 90,000 social homes over the 10 years, 36,000 affordable purchase, which is new and coming back. The affordable purchase was stood down in 2011, so that's really roaring back now. And 18,000 cost rental homes. And again, major role for approved housing bodies and the Land Development Agency in that. A significant ambition, particularly when we're coming from not having any cost rental homes in the country. So look, that's very exciting to me, because I would have seen in other jurisdictions how cost rental can really contribute to that sort of a housing system that we want in this country, more sustainable. And then, as I said, a major piece for the private sector, 156,000 to come private homes for sale or rent. And in a way, there's that whole balancing piece between the role of the state and, affecting the market so that the market performs better itself. In terms of those numbers, informed by a higher level of research commissioned with the ESRI, which comes up with this number of the 33,000 homes per year. And then you can see it's roughly broken down, 10,000 social homes, as you know, major emphasis on additional build into the system of those social homes, 4,000 affordable purchase, 2,000 cost rental, and then 17,000 to be delivered by the market. So look, one of the important things, not just what has gone before, but even in more recent times since the new government has come in, some very important building blocks put in place before the plan. And one of them, as you know only too well, is the money. So we have clear sight on the money to deliver those numbers to 2026, 20 billion, 4 billion a year, fully costed, in terms of delivery, which is very important on a multi-annual basis. The first ever Affordable Housing Act, which we brought through and was passed by the Oireachtas in the summer. So again, that's the first time that I can remember that Affordable Housing had an act on its own and wasn't part of a broader housing act. The Land Development Agency Act was finalised in the summer as well, and again, a major and evolving role for the Land Development Agency, and not just in terms of delivering itself, but working with delivery partners. And we bring all those groups together centrally to make sure that the plan is delivered and that the policies enjoy ongoing coherence. Tenancy protection, cost rental, the first ever cost rental units in the state, which happened over the summer. Clúid approved housing body out in Balbriggan, delivering rents 40% below market today for people today. So again, that was a pretty momentous moment for the state, because cost rental has been an ambition for the state for quite a while. Irish Water and other investment, and the reason I put that up there is that we know that housing doesn't exist in a vacuum, and it's very important that the overall system and infrastructure is in place as well. And then the final piece is around the minister signing the Lisbon Declaration, which was where European countries came together to say that, look, we're not going to tolerate, we're not going to accept homelessness. And there was an overarching objective to eradicate it, which Ireland signed up to by 2030, which has been followed through in the plan. So look, just to give you those numbers broken down by year, and look, this is in the plan, so you will have seen it. But one of the things we're, trying to emphasize is I suppose, a realism but ambition. And you can see there that the trajectory is to build from what we were doing around the 21,000 homes per annum, which was obviously affected then by COVID, but to build from that progressively up to the 33, and then to continue beyond that out to 2030 to deliver the average 33 over the period that we need. And you'd see those breakdowns that I mentioned before across social, affordable, cost rental, and then the private sector. So look, there's a big ambition there, but we're confident that with working with our delivery partners that it's achievable. And as we know, it's a must do for the country. So look, I'm going to talk a little bit about affordable housing, which is the division that I have. And look, just to say, in terms of that Affordable Housing Act, and look, the reason I wanted to talk about this in a bit of detail was that this is very new. So I think, look, there's a very good understanding of the social housing mechanism, delivery mechanisms, and look, a lot of those need to be accelerated and expanded, and particularly the new build. Affordable is new and is being brought back. So the Affordable Housing Act did four things. First of all, it brings back a local authority affordable purchase. And just to say again, local authorities can work with delivery partners on that. So there are opportunities in that space. Cost rental, and again, that can be delivered by approved housing bodies, local authorities, and the LDA. And indeed broader than that, but particularly at the outset. The First Home Scheme is a shared equity scheme on the market, again, part of a blend of products to give access and affordability to people that are seeking to buy a home. And a huge amount of work underway on that with the banks to deliver that shared equity scheme, which would be very broadly applicable across the country and available across the country. And then Part 5, you would have heard about the planning gain to increase from 10% to 20% social, but the 10% social to be ring-fenced. So that's sacrosanct that we get the 10% social in all of the relevant developments. So the legislation was commenced in August, and the regulations are nearly in place. So that's a key building block in terms of affordable housing. Cost rental, as I mentioned, I would have done a lot of work with this. This was actually first mentioned back in that social housing strategy in 2013 as an ambition. So as I said, the country, it has been an ambition for quite a while. The first homes have been delivered 40% below market in Balbriggan, so in a key area where rents are high. Second development with 2 approved housing bodies, and Dunleary advertised recently, and that was supported by the Affordable Housing Fund. The first scheme there that I mentioned was supported by the cost rental equity loan, which again, I think this was mentioned at previous ICSH engagements. That was a real example of where the state came together, the Department, Housing Agency, and AHBs to from inception to rollout to delivery of the first homes in that scheme was less than a year. So, real sign of things to come in that space. Targeted, obviously, it's not for everywhere cost rental, and it works best where rents are highest, particularly at the outset, and urban areas a bit denser. Homes are retained in public ownership with long-term investment. That's really important. That was stressed to us time and time again by different countries that rolled out cost rental. The countries that sold off the stock regretted it, and the countries that didn't really saw the benefit over the long term for their housing system. Rents are linked to the cost of delivery, not the market. Linked to inflation, stronger security of tenure over time, targeted at middle income earners, and as I said, can deliver in the region of 20 to 50% below market using different forms of financing that are available. And there'll be another call for the cost rental equity loan very soon. So there was around 400 units approved under the first call, and significant ambition under the plan. So look, I'll just move on to a couple of other areas that I'm working on, and particularly around homelessness and social inclusion. And again, look, different approved housing bodies are involved in some of these areas to different extents. But look, I think overall it's very important. And one of the key pieces is that the key exit for homelessness for a lot of people is social housing. So that linkage to social housing and how we do it, and particularly around one beds and things, is very important. But again, we're not starting from scratch, and through huge work by local authorities and ourselves and NGOs, AHBs, the numbers have dramatically decreased over the last 2 years, down by nearly 2,500 from the high of 10,000 plus. As I said, in terms of the Lisbon Treaty, we're going to work towards eradicating homelessness by 2030. Now, that's a big ambition, but we're very realistic about it. And the way we're looking at it is that 2,300, which brought us down to below 8,000, you need to get down to 7,000, to 6,000, to 5,000, etc. That's how we're looking at it. So a lot of hard yards to be done, but you have to want it and go for it, and that's the plan. So setting that target has gone down really well with the stakeholders, etc. Everybody really wants to go for that. So part of it will be housing first, and again, working with local authorities and NGOs, huge amount of work done there. North of 600 will have been delivered, which allows us to be ambitious and go for a further 1,200 over the next 5 years. And look, there's a 90% retention rate of tenancies within that. So it shows you that when you house people, even though they may have complex needs, but when you address those complex needs and the housing, there's a much greater opportunity for those people to be able to maintain the tenancy, and everything else improves then with that. We're going to have a new National Homeless Action Committee, and that'll bring all the stakeholders together to oversee and deliver on the actions. Outreach is going to be increased, and again, we saw the benefit. One of the things that happened during COVID was that you had to reach out to more people, and vulnerable people in particular, and there was some great benefits from that we're now going to lock in as we move forward. So even though COVID and the pandemic has been so difficult, some of this stuff has benefited from the learning of how agencies can operate together during those sort of very difficult times. And then the Department of Health is very closely working with us around this, and the HSE, and that link to the complex needs of individuals and individual healthcare plans is very prominent in the plan. A couple of other things I'll talk about, and they're all covered in the plan, but they'll be very close to our own hearts in this division, is the housing options for older people. I suppose the big thing we've done there is really, in terms of the planning for housing going forward, local authorities are really going to have to plan for what we know is our aging population, and to ensure that there's choice for that aging population. So we know that aging in your community is often the most desirable and gives the best outcomes, but there has to be options to do that. And sometimes, as people, the home gets a bit big for them, etc. So look, that's going to be a very important part of the strategy moving forward. Likewise for people with disabilities, etc. very important and needs a specific focus. Same around traveller and international protection, and working with the Department of Children on the white paper on direct provision. So look, I'll finish up on this just to say, and I mentioned most of these already, the next step will be very detailed planning at a local authority by local authority level. There will be engagement with AHBs and the ICSH at every level. I'll be doing it centrally with Donal and the guys in terms of the overall planning, and that same thing will happen at a local level through the local authorities, who will be delivering local housing delivery action plans by the end of the year. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Barry. And as Barry said, the work being done by the approved housing body sector, along with our local authority partners over the last two strategies, have actually led to this current strategy, Housing for All. The big numbers, very ambitious plan, and a very important role for the approved housing body sector. But we're up for the challenge, and we welcome this opportunity, and we've been looking for it for a long time. So I'll now hand you over to John Hannigan of Circle Voluntary Housing Association, one of the larger AHBs in the state, to talk to you about how the sector viewed this plan. Over to you, John.
Thank you, John. Hi, a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Johnny, and very happy to be here. I'm presenting this in Singapore, and it's in the evening, 9 p.m. here. So I just want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I'm actually from the Housing and Development Board in Singapore, and today I'll be presenting to you how we have been driving greater sustainability and livability for public housing developments. Maybe a little bit of background in Singapore to set some context. We are actually a very small city-state, only about 720 square kilometers, and population is about 5.7 million and slowly increasing. Public housing is the majority in Singapore, and we now have more than 1 million units. Most of these units are home ownership, and we're housing something like 80% of the Singaporean population. So you can see that our building program is actually quite huge. We are looking at 17,000 units per year. The Housing and Development Board, or HDB for short, we were founded in 1960s. Clearly, our goal is to look at affordable housing at good quality and value. But another thing that we focus a lot on is, of course, creating a vibrant and sustainable town. Just to give you a glimpse of how we have progressed in this journey, we started off bringing people from the slums to very functional homes. And over the years, we've been improving our quality of our public housing, including enhancing greenery and driving sustainable and livability until today. So, like I said, back in the 60s, before HDB was formed, these is the living conditions of most Singaporeans. They're living in slums, fire hazards, and also a lot of health concerns. The government took this seriously, and HDB, with a very massive program, start developing lots of flats in order to house, to give a roof to our Singaporeans. We started off with very functional homes, pipe electricity and pipe water and sewerage, and in order to give a very safe and comfortable homes. But over the years, like in the 1980s, we started to do comprehensive town planning to enhance the quality of the living conditions for our Singaporeans. So we have always used the live, work, play, and learn concept in our town planning, so that when one lives in HDB towns, they are near their work. There are also facilities and amenities to meet their needs. Today, in 2000, this is actually the glimpse of how our HDB developments look like. For those who have not visited Singapore before, the shot that I've shown down here is in Bishan, and we focus a lot in trying to enhance sustainability in our housing estates, knowing that lots of energy and water are used in the residential homes. And moving forward, we are not stopping there. We continue to see how to enhance health in our estates, and also using smart technology to make lives better. But like many cities, we face urban challenges such as climate change. Our population, as I said, is growing, and our population is also aging. So this is calls for things that we have to look at, new innovative solution, especially deploying technology to help us do our job better. So with that, we actually have a roadmap for better living, where we have three pillars. We want to look at well-designed towns, sustainable towns, and of course, community-centric towns. And because HDB is involved with the planning, design, construction, the operation and maintenance, including community development, we are in a very good position to try out new ideas and using smart technology as an enabler to support them. And when we roll out new solutions, we have our clear R&D process that we adopt. First, whether is it with the companies or with the universities, we will test new solutions in our labs. And if these labs, I always say that if we want to fill, we'll fill in these labs before we take them into actual towns to test them and get feedback from our residents. And once these solutions are a little bit more mature and well accepted by the residents, then we'll deploy them nationwide. I'll be sharing with you some of the things that we are doing as part of my presentation. But first, I thought it's important to share with you that when we talk about sustainability in HDB towns, we have a clear sustainable development framework that we adopt with clear 10 key outcomes that revolves around the 3 dimensions of sustainability: environmental, social, and economics. Just to give you a glimpse of how we drive this framework, let's say we have the desired outcome of low carbon development. We would then form strategies and the various initiatives that will help us achieve clear KPIs for each town. And these KPIs are linked to our national KPIs for environmental sustainability. And with the technology always advancing, smart technology now is something that we are looking at seriously to see how to enhance livability in our estates. Over here, I show you the framework. Many people come with us with many solutions and use cases, which we group them to help us with our planning, enhancing the environment, managing our estate, enhancing living for our residents, and of course, building community. And in the lower layer, you'll see that it all has to do with sensors, build a clear communication network and a data hub to do our work better. So I'll go through very quickly some initiatives to give you a glimpse of how we plan our towns. For example, we model wind flow in towns to make sure that the wind flow helps to enhance thermal comfort in the homes without the need of air conditioning, which is actually very energy intensive. And we do several iterations with the orientation and the placement of the blocks in order to get the right town planning. And it's not just on wind flow, we also look at noise, temperature, and solar irradiance, so as to ensure that when towns are built, they actually gives our residents the best sort of living conditions. With technology now, with our planners and engineers, we are able to use things like HoloLens to actually plan out the towns and the building blocks. As you can see down here, with the COVID, it is actually much more useful because they don't have to come to the same place. They can actually discuss virtually. In terms of space creation, we have been doing floating structures, which our engineers design, so that we have floating structures like wetlands that help cleanse water bodies. But we didn't stop there. We even use our floating innovation to look at placement of solar, because as I shared, Singapore is very land constrained. Later I'll be sharing with you that while we do place solar panels in our residential roofs, but it's just so limited. So we have to look at the water bodies like our reservoirs and even in the nearby sea. In terms of creating underground spaces, instead of retaining walls, we also try to innovate and try to use green such that it looks more pleasant and also enhance the air quality. Now look at design. We are always constantly improving the design because we know the family and social structure is always changing, and we do lots of prototyping in order to keep up with times of what people really want in their homes. And we use building information modeling as most of our design works. and share them with all our consultants when they design our flats. Greenery is something that we take very seriously on, and we want to make greenery work harder for us. What do I mean by that? We came up with a biophilic town framework where such that instead of just aesthetic, we're using greenery to help us things like cleansing the water before they reach our streams, growing the healthy biodiversity to enhance health, and even creative way of allowing people to play and learn with the water. So these are some of the things that we are doing in our biophilic town framework when we design our towns. And when we do our simulation and we find that there are some hotspots, we'll look at how to use innovative way of greening, even our roof, such that it will reduce the heat gain in our towns. This shows you one of our innovations where we place greenery on top of roofs in order to bring down the temperature. But we can only put so much greenery in our towns. So now we are actually looking in terms of cool paint to see how we can do this at hard surfaces and including the pavement, so as to try to reduce ambient temperature by as much as 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. This actually helps to reduce the use of air conditioning in our residential homes. Other technology like phase change materials are also in the works. In terms of construction, because of our limited manpower, we look at ways that we can construct with high productivity. So currently now we are actually designing our homes using room-sized precast components. Such actually helps to make our buildings go up faster in terms of the large building programs that we have. And we are using technologies such as smart cranes and also RFID in order to track the components as they move to site. Recently, we have also looked into using 3D printing of concrete components so that we can do up life-size volumetric prototype. This you are seeing is one of the lab. It's still in R&D stage, but we have big plans and we are hoping that we can print our buildings, which will actually cut down a lot of manpower. In terms of maintenance, I think energy usage, we use smart lighting. This smart lighting is not just motion sensor, it predicts where the people are moving, and it helps to cut down as much as 60% of the energy needed in our public housing towns. And I shared with you earlier, we're using solar to help reduce, to help generate green energy in the flats. And the rainwater, we actually harvest them and we place them for use for irrigation and also washing of the common areas. With all this technology introduced, we actually have lots of sensors in our towns, and these sensors help us to monitor the maintenance of the municipal services that we provide for our residents. And we're collecting them, analyzing so that we use AI to see how we can manage our pumps better and our lifts better. Community is a big part in what we do, so we try to see how can we make use of data to understand our people better, and grouping our people into the new sort of family structure that they have. Can we actually design our flats better to suit their needs? We even have a quality of life framework so that we know for different type of persona living in our flats, what sort of things that they really need. And so we'll try to provide in our towns. I'll just give you an example. Multi-story car parks are actually quite common in HDB designs. But based on our study, we found that it also cuts off people from allowing to meet up with each other. So we started raising the car parks so that there's a social hub to allow people to meet. Just to give you a glimpse of the car park that we have designed, the social hub actually frees up space at the ground level in order for people to do more community activities, including the rooftops of our car parks. We also use it for sports facilities. I've said much about the technology. So to do that, we really need to test in our towns. In the existing towns, we are testing them. We get good feedback from residents, and that gives us confidence to roll out in the national program. This shows you one of our older towns. It was developed in 1980s, where we went in, we put in quite a number of green solutions and also smart technology. And once they work, we will see how to roll them up to other towns. But new towns allows us to do more. So in Pongo, our first eco town, and Tenga, our forest town, it gives us a lot of opportunity. This is just how Pongo looks like today. And these are all public housing. And we have been introduced lots of green features and also smart technology to for our residents. But Pongo, while we introduce all this, we will be bringing it to another new town in Tenga. This is just at the works at the moment, but we want to introduce more. So I thought it's useful for me to just give you a glimpse of what are our dreams and how we plan for Tenga. It's going to be a forest town, and we plan to make it green and very functional and very livable for our residents. Having said that, it's not just at new towns or going in to do test bidding. We want to roll out in national all our HDB flats. So just to share with you is that some of the learning lessons that we've learned, whether is it from the old towns like Yuhua or the new ones like Pongo, whatever smart solutions or green solutions that work, we will replicate them to all our housing estates in Singapore. Making every town a green town is our ambition. I think I mentioned that we have lots of urban challenges. I thought you should share with you now at this moment, what is the biggest two challenges that HDB faces? One of it is manpower. With 17,000 units per year that we are looking at, if not increasing, there's a real need to see how we can actually use more technology to build our buildings more efficiently, because our people are aging, and the COVID has shown us that we cannot continue to rely on the labor from our neighboring countries. So we really need to see how we can use things like robotics or technology, digitalization to enhance productivity. Another one is that our land space is limited. There's just so much we can build. So we have to go taller in order to house our Singaporeans, but we may need to touch some of the green spaces that we have reserved in the past. And this means more engagement with the nature groups in order to get the understanding to balance between the need for natural green spaces and the need for housing the nation. So with that, I'd like to end by saying that it's a continuous journey, and we're learning all the way. I'm sorry if I went out of time, but just wanted to share with you how we are doing it in Singapore. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much to Dr. Johnny Wong from the Building and Research Institute, Housing and Development Board in Singapore, for that very engaging presentation. I particularly found their approach to planning their towns very interesting, and also how they brought nature into such heavily populated areas. And I do think that we benefit hugely from listening to how other jurisdictions across the world deal with similar housing challenges that we face here in Ireland. Virtual conferences make this very easy to do, and they present us with an opportunity to learn from others rather than always feeling we have to reinvent the wheel. I'm not sure that we'd have a huge requirement for cool paint in Ireland, but it was a very clever way to try and reduce energy usage. And I also love the approach that puts the resident at the centre of everything they do. And it's something that we here in Ireland need to focus a little bit more on. Anyway, that was Dr. Johnny Wong, who is obviously not John Hannigan from Circle. So I'm going to now ask John Hannigan from Circle Voluntary Housing Organisation to give us the Irish sectoral view of the Housing for All plan.
Thanks, Fiona. Great to be here this afternoon. Fascinating from Dr. Johnny Wong. Thank you very much for taking part. I know it's quite late over there in Singapore, so great to be part of the virtual conference. I'm going to talk a little bit about today from an HP perspective, what we see in terms of the Housing for All. Good thing is I've checked my slides against what Barry has produced earlier on, and thankfully they all match up. I was a bit concerned that there might be some differences. So here we go. First of all, before I do that, if I get my slides to move, just a second. I just want to say during this, I'm also going to be showing some examples of some things that we're doing in Circle in terms of future development as well. There's 152 apartments in Crumlin, working with the local authority, the DCC, Dublin City Council, and we're looking forward to be able to produce 50% social and 50% CREL in the not too distant future. So, Housing for All, I think everybody's probably fed up reading it at this point in time. It's 100, actually, people say it's 160 pages long. It's more, it's close to 190 pages when you take everything together. 213 objectives, 10 for completion before the end of September, which is quite ambitious. 62 to be completed by the end of the year, and a further 74 with no specific deadlines. They're ongoing. So there's quite a lot in this. From an AHB perspective, we're talked about directly 10 times in those 213 objectives. So while we are talked about, I think euphemistically as part of the government state or agencies that it might be participating, it's good to hear that Barry and other speakers from the government over the last day or so, particularly the Minister, saying that AHBs have a central role to play. I think we have, and I think we should be doing an awful lot more. So what does it say? Well, I just wanted to put this up because anybody who's a betting kind of person, and I'm not, might be looking at when the government might decide when to actually pull the plug on and go for an election. As you can see, there's a whole range of things that have to be done up until Q4 2022. It looks like there's not much happening after that, but the reality is we're hoping to see things evolve over time. And I'm glad to hear that this is a multi-annual approach, which means that even though for the first 2 years that everything is front-loaded, actually beyond that, we should be able to see the delivery being undertaken. So big policy announcements, lots of them. Biggest one, I think, for me is working towards ending homeless by 2030, which is absolutely fantastic. But actually, it's working towards. We need a firm commitment. And I think the plans that Barry talked about, particularly from his team, who are going to be looking after us, were really important. And seeing how that detail works out to get us there by 2013. I think it's also wording that is recognizing that there was a hostage to fortune previously, 2010, before 2010, when it was said we would end homelessness by 2010. We didn't get to do that for many different reasons. So this is good that we're working towards it. I'm a little bit disappointed, but there is a huge emphasis in the plan on home ownership. I think home ownership is really important. Giving people the opportunity to own their home is really important. We've heard from Dr. Johnny that 96% of the people in Singapore have home ownership. We probably won't get to that. We're about 69% at this point in time in Ireland. I'm hoping that we can see a bigger rental sector, both the private sector and from a social housing and affordable perspective over time. So it's great to see that we have some specific funds that allow that to happen. Also, more enabling of local authorities to deliver more land and more homes. We've heard about the Part 5. We've heard about the fact that they need new resources to be able to do that as well. So that's really important that they're geared up to be able to do that. My sense is that they should become and will become greater strategic partners in the enabling of local authority land being utilised, but also in helping us determine where and how through the housing development plans that they're now looking at. A much bigger role for the LDA, particularly with the specific project TOSIC, but also on the NARPS properties. And just to remind everybody, actually most of the NARPS properties at this point in time are actually managed by AHBs. And I'm sure there's ambition from the AHBs to own some of those properties in the longer term. So that's just something that we need to be considering. They're already in the public sector effectively through our management and through our maintenance. And it's great to see that that's being continued through the LDA. But actually there's an option there for AHBs, I think, as well. Perhaps something for consideration in terms of the rest of how this plan is rolled out. We've also been promised a referendum on housing. Now, it's quite general in terms of the language used. It's not talking about the right to housing, but there is a referendum. And I'm hoping that over the next couple of years that we actually work towards ensuring that within the language that's used within the referendum, that the right to housing is enshrined, because it is something that we do need to see. Lots of people have been calling for in our sector, but also in other sectors. And I think if we have that, then we also have the bedrock on which we can build a future for future generations. The possibility of a national differential rent scheme is very much welcomed. It's something that most HBs have been kind of looking for the last, God knows how many years, actually, a very long time. Politically, it's always been difficult to actually put in place, but now we're actually seeing real language, real plans in respect of it. The fact that we have more than 100 different types of differential rent across the country is unacceptable, and you can be paying this different amounts of money for the same property in two different counties, or in fact side by side if they're just on the county border. So we do need to see that it's an equitable thing that needs to be brought in and delivered quite quickly. Investment, it's great to see that we're not only investing in our cities, but we're also investing in our towns. The national framework has set out, national planning framework has set out how we might go about that. It's great to see that our towns are getting more and more of the resources that they require in order to be able to deliver that. And COVID has taught us we don't need to be in the cities to be able to work. And it's great to see that Dr. Johnny was also saying from a Singaporean perspective that you can plan and design buildings and still be miles and cities apart when you're doing that. The use of technology, the use of virtual imaging, the use of AI needs to be up within our country. Again, this is another scheme that we're delivering at scale. This is 54 apartments for people who are going to be older persons. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of greenery involved in respect to this. And that's one of the things that we need to do more on. Think about the sustainability. Utilize the research from places like Singapore and others where they're seeing how the green can be actually incorporated within the design from the early stages. This is going to be in Inchicore next to the St. Michael's Estate. And that big green patch you see in the bottom left is going to be 436 homes in the not too distant future delivered by DCC. So from that perspective, we need to look at how we're going to maintain this level of greening and sustainability of our developments. Most people who know me know that I'm a recovering accountant, and I have been for a long period of time. But every now and then I have to slip back into numbers because it helps me feel good. So thank God for the Housing for All plan, because it actually gives me loads of big numbers to think about and talk about, some of which you've already seen. I've elongated some of them so you get a real sense of how big those numbers are. So 20 billion, that's 20 billion, and that's 12 billion direct exchequer funding. Really important that this happens. It's great to hear that it's a multi-annual program. If you dig a little deeper, is it enough? We've heard earlier from Pat from AIB that he believes that there is plenty of money out there to actually, and I agree with them. Capital is available. I think there's a lot of capital available. But actually, if you take the numbers that are required, 300,000 homes over the next 10 years, that 20 billion over the next 5 years is actually a good start to this, but it needs to go on for the next 10 years, not just for the next 5 years. So you've seen some of these figures from Barry, so I'm not going to spend too much time on 300 new homes, 90,000 social homes, really good, but actually 95,000 were going to be delivered and were delivered effectively under, or close to being delivered under the Rebuilding Ireland. So it's good to see this. Is it ambitious? Yes, it is. And it's ambitious given the number of people we have to actually develop. And I'll talk about that in a second. Great to see affordable purchase as part of the process with a specific fund and legislation already in place to be able to support it. 18,000 CREL cost rental homes, fantastic. Again, give that opportunity for that squeezed middle, those people on the middle income earners who can't afford to live in our cities. Maybe not so many of them may want to in the future. Thankfully, we have the homes to be able to do that elsewhere. And 156,000 market sale and rental. That's a very significant build program from our type of economy. The good thing is that we've already heard from Dr. Johnny that they're doing 70,000 homes a year in Singapore with a population similar to ours, a land mass that's an awful lot smaller. So the reality is we should be able to do this if we can move to more smart homes. We heard from Sean O'Connor this morning that off-site manufacture, 3D printing, use of AI, all those things will help to move us quicker. Things we haven't heard so far today, and we might hear over the next, is also requiring for 500,000 retrofitted homes. 500,000, okay? Mostly local authority, but also AHB and others. That's a very significant workload, as well as 400,000 new heat pumps to existing homes in this period of time as well. So this kind of brings into question, is that 20 billion going to be enough for everything? The reality is it isn't. We're going to need other funders to be involved in this. And I think we're going to need those funders that have been asked, we've been told are going to be phased out over time. I think we still are going to need every form of capital that's available to be able to deliver all of this. The other thing that's really important is that there's 80,000 new construction-related jobs required. That's the maximum number per the 27,500 is what's required now, which is great, but actually 80,000 could be created over that period of time. We have got quite a significant unemployment rate at the moment at 174,000. So we're talking about nearly nearly 47% of those who are unemployed may be able to find jobs in the construction-related areas. The question is, are we doing enough to train them? Will we get them there quick enough to be able to deliver what we need? Just to give you this slide shows what's required over that period of time. You can see where the government's term ends. So we are seeing some significant increases in the short term. One of the difficulties I think there is, and we need to consider and work on, is actually the proportion of social and affordable homes reduces over time, given the overall output. That's something we need to be careful of. There will be a need for more social and affordable. We heard that from the European Union this morning, from Gerardo. So we need to be careful that we're actually not reducing the number of proportionately over time. More social, more affordable is going to be required, not less. In terms of where we are at the moment, this is what, and Sean showed this morning, we're nowhere near that delivery level. We have to deliver more. It is really good that our chair this morning, Aidan Hayden, suggested that, actually not suggested, there's facts. The AHB sector delivered nearly 50% more than it was due to in terms of its targets. We know we can do more. We know we can scale up. We have the capacity, the experience, and the knowledge to work with our local authorities in partnership, which is what we do now, but to do more of that. And to work with the other potential organizations that may be also working in the same space, the Land Development Agency, for example, and maybe some of the private developers as well. We need to work collaboratively to deliver more. And I know that John Coleman, Chief Exec, is coming on later on or tomorrow to talk about what the LDA are doing. We need to see them as partners, not competition. This is part of what we're doing as well out in City West, Gartas Lane, 224 homes being delivered in partnership with Tetrarch. And it's a fantastic scheme for older persons and for people who are looking for affordable housing on a leasing scheme basis. So there's a lot of innovation going in at this point in time to deliver scale, to deliver what people are looking for. And use of technology in terms of design, use of technology in terms of well-being is very important in terms of these being sustainable homes. Nearly there, folks. So what do I see as success? What was going to be required to make this very much a deliverable plan? Well, let's get beyond the policy. Let's get beyond the plan. Let's get into real execution. And I say that this is, and Barry referred to this in his time as the third plan. In my time, it's the fourth plan in 9 years. Okay, the fourth plan. So let's keep some stability. Let's give it time. We heard earlier on from some of the speakers that it needs 2 to 3 years. We have to deal with some of the stuff that's going to happen in that period of time, but we need that time to be able to make that delivery work. Learn from how we do, adapting, evolving, and improving. And Dr. Johnny's research demonstrates that very clearly. These are some of the factors we need to take into account when we're delivering our land and delivering our processes from now on. The use of AI, the use of technology, the use of offsite is all really important if we're going to meet those targets that we've set ourselves. This is really important. Maintaining all the actors in place and on the stage, delivering their own lines. We have a lot of organizations at this point in time involved in the delivery of housing. We need them all. There's none of them that actually are expendable. If we're going to deliver these targets, which are stretching targets, then we're going to need everybody, including those who provide capital funding on any kind of basis at this point in time. The labour force, people that were out there helping to scale up, we need them doing theirs. We need the LDA, the local authorities, and the AHBs working collaboratively in terms of maximising usage of land, in terms of design and delivery. Stability and certainty in the detail of what comes next. Barry talked about they're going to get into really detailed planning in terms of local authorities down at every level, which is great to hear. But actually, what we need is certainty and stability in that. So we have the policy, we have the plan. Let's leave that as in place as it is now. Let's really make sure that as we develop that out over the next number of years, that we can constantly go back and say, yes, we've ticked that box. We're not going to keep changing and chopping different things in and out. Our tax and everything else is really important, that there's stability there for the investors, stability in planning so that we can get them out of planning and onto the ground, and then stability in the policy of ownership and the rental markets. They need to exist. We can't see one dominate over the other. They need to work side by side. And the budget for the next 2 years is really going to be where this is reflected. If we are getting to what we need, then we've already heard there's going to be 5 billion this year and 5 billion next year. That's really important. But actually, we probably need more. And the budget and how we do that in terms of the tax elements are going to be really important. The previous schemes I showed you are things that we are planning to do in the next year or two. These are things we have done. This is out in Dunlavin, 40 brand new homes that have been delivered, A2 rated and NZEB, generally speaking. And they are fantastic new homes for people to live in. I'm going to finish there, but before I do, and 12 minutes or less is hard to do justice really to Housing for All. There's a whole range of things that I haven't mentioned. There's a whole list of them. Things like there's new taxation in vacant homes and site tax. There's tenancies of indefinite duration. There's the minimum BEO requirements. There's phasing out of leasing vacant homes. There's so much more in here that we haven't actually been able to talk about yet because there's so much detail. And I'm hoping that there's going to be an opportunity to do that over time. One of the things I will say we need to watch out for is the Housing Commission is coming up, and I know John O'Connor is due to speak in the conference. The optimum role for housing associations, AHP provision, is part of the review that they're undertaking. We need to make sure that we're seen as what we do now, which is deliver quality homes, build communities, and deliver sustainability. So let's make sure that that's heard as part of our message. So back to you, Fiona. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, John. That was a very interesting presentation. And can I just say, I would agree with everything you said. I think just as you not surprised, but I do think like there's several things that have been said by several speakers here today that are critical. And the first one is we need to increase supply. We need to increase new build supply. We need to welcome private investment to help us achieve these big numbers. We need cooperation between all parties and not competition. We need to remove a lot of the bureaucracy that's in place. We need to stop changing the goalposts and stick to the plan and give it time. I think everybody, one after another, said that. And we need to work towards the common good and not playing to whoever shouts the loudest. I added that one in because I think it's a major issue at the moment about who really makes decisions. And is it for the common good or is it for particular interests? So we'll go on to the question section now. And we have several questions and only 8 minutes. So I'm going to pick the ones that are the most popular and try and spread it out between the audience. So how do you think the phasing out of long-term leasing between local authorities and private developers will impact on supply and housing targets? And I'm going to ask Barry, if you wouldn't mind making a comment on that. And then I will possibly go back to John for another comment on that, if that's possible.
Yeah, please.
So look, I suppose
no,
that's fine. Look, from our perspective, and look, I think there's a bit of clarity being building on that. It's mainly on the social side of the house in the department here. So look, I know there's a lot of detailed planning being done on that with local authorities and approved housing bodies. And I suppose, look, to be honest with you, there's going to have to be a substitution effect. That's the way we would see it, that we need, the overall delivery numbers. There's an emphasis on particular delivery streams, and that emphasis is going to shift and change over time. So any unit that was planned to be delivered under one stream will be delivered under another. That's I suppose, will be the overall piece, Fiona, in terms of how it's going to work out. But a reflection that there's going to be a bit of work in that.
Thank you, Barry. John, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I think there was an old adage, I think, back in World War II, be careful what you say, it may cost lives. And there's a bit of that, I think, in terms of how the language is being utilized at the moment. We need, as Barry has rightly pointed out, we need everybody to be delivering. We need the capital from everywhere. I agree that there needs to be an amendment to how we do it because the nature of it is probably not the best of value for the state at this point in time. So there's a requirement. But this capital can flick at the switch of a button to other parts of the world without any deep consideration. So language is really important about how we need to welcome all forms of capital that will enable us to meet these targets, which I know Barry does, and I think the state does as well. But I think we just need to be really careful about the language. Are we going to be able to phase this out over time? Yes, but I think it'll take quite a period of time. Do we need to revise how we go about doing that and what kind of deal we're offering? Yes, that actually has to happen too. And it's people like Barry and his team that are going to be really instrumental in making those decisions and helping us get to those potential new deals.
Thanks very much, John. And I have one for Dr. Johnny Wong, and it is, I presume what this person is asking is, do people buy their homes from your organization or do they rent them?
Okay. Maybe I try to explain how our public housing works. Basically, we're driving for home ownership, which means that majority of the people that comes in for HDB public housing, they would be buying the home so that they own it. And they actually can sell the public housing. But there are criteria that you have to hold it for at least 5 years before you're allowed to sell the home. Now, there's also criteria for you to apply to buy a public housing from us also. Because we support family nucleus, it will have to be either a married couple or a child with the parent to apply for the home before they are eligible to buy it. Now, we do have rentals also, but these are usually for very poor sort of income people that we want to help, and we rent it out at very low rates. But this actually forms a very small portion of what public housing has to offer. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have another one for Barry. And is the department's plan to accept funding applications for CREL projects on a rolling basis going forward, or will there be a call for proposals similar to last year? I think we all would love to know the answer to that one.
I would say in the first instance there'll be another call, but I suspect we'll be moving to rolling. It's just it's in terms of, I suppose, what comes in at the next one, Fiona, depending on, you know, we'd have an overall number in mind, so it depends what comes in the next time. In fairness to the AHBs, they answered the call the first time around incredibly, and just to recognise the HFA as well in terms of the co-funding piece of it. So look, we're going to be doing another call soon, and depending on how that goes and what comes in, it may well roll after that.
Can I make the point, and I'm sure many of my colleagues in the sector would echo this, if we want long-term, sustainable new supply coming to the market, we would really request that that call is not for delivery the following year or the next year, but that we're actually allowed to put forward a strong pipeline of CREL schemes coming into the long term that will be new build. So I think I'm speaking for everybody there. Okay, absolutely. So we have come to the end of the time. I've got somebody in my ear telling me to finish it up. So first of all, I'd say I want to thank all our speakers very much and for the very interesting presentations. And I would also, just the last thing I'd like to say is to wish all the approved housing bodies who projects shortlisted for the ICSH Alliance Community Housing Awards the very best of luck. And all of us in the sector know how much work is involved in delivering these projects, and everyone deserves recognition. But what's most important is that each of these projects are delivering homes and services to people who need them. So I really best of luck. And I mean, obviously I hope Clúid win something, but you know, I'm very happy for everybody else to win as well. So I'd just like to thank everybody for joining this session. Thank all the speakers, thank the ICSH for giving us the opportunity, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.